Welcome to the AV Experience for another Rooms in Review. I'm your host, Ryan Charpentier of Ascend Audio Video, aka Moltar, on AVS Forum, joined by Ben Goff from Cinema Bureau. We missed last week. Blame Ben for that. He forgot about me, left me hanging.
Entirely my fault.
It was your fault.
I had visitors.
You're not going to live that down. I'm going to constantly blame you for that. It's not going to go anywhere. You're going to live for that forever. Ben just told me, and I'm throwing him out there, so this has got to happen, that Peter Aylett would like to join us more in the future, and I know how much our audience loves Peter. I love Peter. Peter's one of those people that can't really dislike Peter, especially his shirts. His cinema shirts, his expo shirts.
They're not his expo shirts. They're his shirts. They're not special for expo.
That is fair.
Right.
That is fair. And I love Peter's shoe game is also always on point. He's always just great.
It's a cowboy boot game, really, I think, isn't it? He definitely has some decent cowboy boots.
He has a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
we're a man of great taste.
He is. We're going to have Peter on, I think, a bit more. I know the people love Peter. Peter is a man of the people. So we will have him on, but we're going to jump into this. So this is Antonino's room. It is a Ascendo. It's a self-built room using Ascendo and Yamaha as a preamp, IOTA VX amplifiers, Morovinger subs. It's got a mini DSP, uses a JVC NZ500. We'll get all into that, but there's some good things and some bad things about this room, but the awesome thing about kind of the negatives, I won't call them bad, I'll call them negatives, is the owner of this room already knows a lot of that, and he's already self-disclosed some of the shortcomings of the space, so it's on his radar on what to do. But let's jump into this. This is Antonino's room. Does it have a name?
The Ara, I think, is
Ara Cinema, ARA Cinema. And let's have a look at what he says. So the Ara Cinema, I built the cinema myself, except for the wood finishing work. I wanted to have a pleasant space, knowing that few choices aren't probably the best for acoustics, such as the woodwork where the back and side walls go. But, you know, we'll talk about that before I show pictures. This is a choice, and this is what we tell all of our viewers, that you got to make these choices. And if the aesthetic outweighs at least a little bit of the performance, that is an okay choice, as long as it's an informed decision. Would you agree with that, Ben?
Always. Always. Hey, everything we're doing always is a balance of compromise. It's the worst compromises are the ones you don't know you're making. So as soon as you know that things have got to be, you know, an educated decision is always the right place to be.
Yes. And I would, in a lot of cases, it's tough to screw up an educated decision. You're making a choice. It's 50. You're going to go one way or the other, as long as it's informed. I can't really call it a wrong decision, as long as it was made within the best interests of you obtaining the experience that you're trying to get to. As long as it was made in that light, I don't think you can make a bad choice.
Right.
Is my point. Description of the space. So it's located in Mannheim, Germany. The theater is in the basement of the house. So basements in Germany, I didn't know that was a thing. I guess they've got conducive soil for that. Front wall and right wall is concrete. Back wall is brick. So have you noticed a big difference acoustically between concrete and brick, or should they be kind of looked at similarly?
It depends. So it depends what you're doing inside that. Like traditional UK construction, there'll be drywall inside either. It's rare that the room is finished as concrete or brick. We're normally drywalling inside all spaces, really. Different types of concrete and brick can be wildly different acoustically. So if you've got like a lightweight, over here we call them thermalite, there's all different names, but you know the super lightweight aerated bricks, they're really porous and they can actually be really quite absorptive. Like you would think, because it's a really hard surface, that it would be really reflective, but actually they're quite absorptive because they're so porous.
There's a lot of
against if it was a skimmed hard solid concrete or poured like a monolithic concrete, that can be very, very reflective. So when we say concrete, it kind of depends on the finishing, the porosity, there's no one size fits all, really.
So Antonino says no drywall in this space. And I'm just getting into that. So back wall is brick. Left wall is 5 centimeter thick on timber studs. The room is small, and this is in meters, 5 by 3.9 by 2.5.
You
Floors.
say small because you live in fields and free
Oh,
land. That's a
it's
perfectly normal
average.
size European
I
room.
said small because the numbers are small. My brain didn't compute everything. It's not a small room. I'd say it's a bonus room in the United States, so it's not a small room. Floor is tiles. The room is treated with rock wool and QDR diffusers. Front wall is roughly 30 centimeters of rock wool, partially estimate 50% covered with wood. There is a window, which we will show in the images. Back wall is 20 centimeters of rock wool, partly free and partially covered with big fusers. Left wall is wood and acoustic door. So he does have a solid door. I don't think there are any images on what that door is. We can't really talk about it. There are 4 HOFA QDR diffusers, and the rest is with thick wool, which is partially covered with wood. You'll notice a trend here. There's a lot of absorbative material. Bright wall is concrete and has a window. There are 5 HOFA QDR diffusers. Rest is with rock wool. Ceiling, front part treated with absorption. Back above the seating is with 8 QDR diffusers. Front of the room has a thick curtain on the left and right. That should help with light reflections. Carpet you see in the picture has been removed and will be substituted with a smaller black rug, 1.5 meters deep, to get rid of screen reflections. I love that. Setup is a 9.4.4. All right, so before we even talk about equipment, let's look at the room. We're just going to jump. Where is it? Right there. There we go. Oh, and then we want to get rid of that one. Okay, so here is the room.
I have an immediate first thing to say here.
Okay.
Right. Notice the most important thing, and we've talked about this a few times now when we talked about the modal analysis and where to place subwoofers and starting with seats. You called this a small room. I'll call this a standard, normal European room.
I'm just rebuked what I said.
I'm holding you to it.
Okay,
but notice how this has a perfectly reasonable amount of seats for the amount of space.
Yes.
Right.
Great job, Antonino.
I don't know how many people live in the home. I don't know how many people use this regularly, but when I see a room this big and there's an attempt to get 2 rows, a 2-seat and a 3 behind it, or a 3 and a 4. If we were looking at somewhere between 5 and 7 seats in this space, alarm bells would be everywhere immediately. But just looking at that floor plan, I mean, as a starting point, come on, we've got the seats, right? They're not bang on the halfway line. They're not they're out in free space. They're not slammed up against that back wall. Just thank you, right? Put the right amount of seats in the room. We've nailed it.
It's a cozy room. I mean, this is well done.
Oh, very much. Yeah, it's amazing.
Now, I know I mentioned this, but what was and you've seen Antonino talk about this, and he admits it in the submission that we have. What is one of your worries about this space?
If you drop down 2 more images, this is my worry. There's
not this.
No.
This.
Yeah, and I think you've got a couple more. If you go down another 2 images, you'll see some more. I think there's probably been too much absorption added. And I think he's already aware of that and has probably tried to counter some of that already and actually rein back some of that absorption. Look, lots of treatment can help the very low end, but it's hard to not over damp higher frequencies.
Can I play the Switch at Grandma's?
Hey!
That's fine. Is she here?
No, but I think Christian might bring his Switch
there. Yeah, you can bring it.
Thanks, Dad.
Sorry.
No worries. So, yeah, there is always just a risk when you chase low-end absorption of resulting in too much at the high end. And from the figures that we had, I think the RT60 was around 0.14. For me, that's too low. I would, I almost try and draw a red line around 0.2. I like it a bit livelier. And I know we have some differences there, because I know like the Mad VR Experience Room, is that its real name?
It's low.
Your demo room is probably lower on the measurement than what my target would be. But so, and the reason we've never set, like, there is no recommended practice of exactly where these numbers have to sit from our perspective. In industry, there is a little bit like the ITU have a model room, which is an ideal room for like detailed listening. Like there is a target for a listening room, and we use that in the RP22 document, but we don't make it a specific parameter, because we can all talk of rooms we've been in that have lower numbers or higher numbers than we would expect to sound good, but they still sound great. So I'm a little concerned by the number I see on paper. I'm a bit concerned by the amount of rock wool I see in the room, but that doesn't mean it doesn't sound great, and I can't say it doesn't. But there is a concern there for me, but it may be overdamped.
And an easy way to kind of attack this is looking at this. The rock wool is not the worst thing to be in the room. You just need to kind of hit it with layers, in my opinion. You can fix a good part of this by putting a reflective surface in front of it. And then depending on that reflective surface, especially if you want to keep your decay time lower for the bass, right? If you're trying to keep a targeted decay time for something else, for something like the lower frequencies, put some type of scatter plate over the front of this. And depending on the thickness or the material of that scatter plate, you can affect and target parts of the decay time or the waterfall plot, the RT60 in your room. So it doesn't always have to just be, oh, I've got to take out absorbative material. Stack it, like make it in layers. And depending on what you're trying to fix or you're trying to obtain, that can allow you to have the absorbative capability on the low end while bringing back some of the liveliness of whatever targeted frequency you're looking at. And you've talked about this in the past, Ben, where people need to look at things more targetedly, right? Instead of a blanket applying everything, going around and figuring out what is actually happening in my room, not as a sum, but looking at each individual part and figure out what is happening over here, what is happening over here, here, and then making adjustments to alleviate whatever you're trying to accomplish, instead of, oh yeah, I've got this, I just need to add more absorption or reflection, and then kind of smattering it all over the place. Take a targeted approach on that. Do you have a great way that people can approach this? Maybe Antonino could go in here, and he's probably already doing it, but where he could start and how he could figure out parts of the room that maybe he needs to address?
There's a couple of things, depending on exactly what that material is, and I haven't read whether it's a rock wool or a glass fiber, but
it's rock wool.
Okay, so we just want to make sure that, like, these are irritants. It's definitely something you do not want to be breathing in if it gets into the space, depending on what the airflow and things are in the space. So I know it's fabric covered. Depending on how open that fabric is, I would just want to make sure it is essentially sealed to rock wool dust getting into the room, just a health and comfort thing. When I'm using rock wool like this, which isn't often anymore, we don't regularly do it this way, but if I was, I would be wrapping it in polyester. Like you get it under a brand name like Dacron, but we'll often, before even the fabric, we'll wrap this and pretty much seal it to make sure there's no fibers getting out. So like that's a health and safety thing from a comfort, depending on exactly what material it is and how likely fibers are to get out from it. Here, what will be really interesting, and it's frustrating because it's not an easy thing to try, but I often shock people when I say that we don't generally put carpets in high performance cinema room. Carpet is going to absorb. It's a big surface area of absorption that will be absorbing high frequencies and not lower. Now, actually, I may have made a mistake here because is that a hard floor on a rug?
Yes.
Okay, so what might interest me, I was going to say it's really hard to try because you can't take the carpet up to try it, but it would be interesting to see how the room measures if you were to remove that rug. Now, I like the rug because it's taking out some reflection. Like if that's a hard white floor, there's going to be a lot of visual reflection off the screen.
Mhm.
But a smaller dark rug might just help some life in that room if it needs it. And it depends. You know, he said himself, it doesn't feel overly dead. Like we're basing this on a number, not a feeling, because we've not been in the space. And
He
there
does
is a
say in
range of how
here
these things feel.
that he's gonna change out the carpet or the rug for a smaller black one,
Oh,
which
see, this is why I should read these things before I make advice, because I'm throwing out things he's already asked.
I already said this,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I hadn't considered that. Yeah, I missed it.
but you know, that reinforces the point that he's on the right track. That's
Yeah.
where you went organically without knowing that he was already doing that. And so that reinforces that's kind of the correct and easy approach that
Yeah.
you can potentially increase, kind of make worse in a positive way, the RT60. We're allowing sound to stay in the room. Reflections are not bad, ladies and gentlemen. They're, as long as they're controlled and you know what's going on in the space, our ears, we are students of reflections. It gives us a ton of information about spaces. If you go stand in an anechoic chamber, it's going to freak you out. Your body, your brain does not like no reflections. You need reflections for things to sound natural. So don't think I got to take everything out. Now, if you're using it only for home theater, I think you can get by. And Ben, you and I have talked about this in the past. You can get by with less reflections, more absorption because you have more channels. But don't think that reflections are bad. Don't think that decay time is bad.
Yeah.
Even in bass, having it linger a little bit is natural. You don't want no decay.
Yeah, and so Floyd Tool, I think it was. I'm certain it was Floyd, so it's fine to say that. He talked about like the treatment of life, like the acoustics of life. So in many normally furnished rooms, you don't need that much absorption at all, actually. So if you've got a couple of bookcases and there's a coffee table and there's a big sofa and a rug, you almost don't need that much more absorption. So some diffusion and scattering is great. And bass trap specifically can be really useful. And it's where, if we're doing a room where we're using panels, like we're adding panels to a room, my go-to route is often to use a tuned membrane absorber where I'm specifically dealing with modal issues in high pressure regions, and I'm not really taking out any of the other life. So I don't use that much broadband absorption when we're doing rooms with panels. Like the fabric itself is taking out some top end, the rug, the sofa's taking out some top end.
Everything is doing something.
Yeah. And in this room, we actually have the curtains, which make so I love this view right here. I absolutely love that.
Business in the front, party in the back, as Peter would say.
It's almost entirely black. Like once you draw those velvet curtains in, you've got this dark tunnel, right?
And Antonio does say that he's already changed out the rug for a black one, so it is better now, even after we're doing this review, than it was before.
So like this image here really points to something that has it's a talking point that's come up actually a couple of times when I've spoken to other integrators, and I've definitely been accused of taking the fun out of cinemas, right? Because we build cinemas that aren't excessively decorative. We don't really go in for big themed rooms with Star Wars sculptures and stuff, right? We build quite plain, simple rooms, which is kind of how I describe this, right? It's not excessively dressed and accessorized. It's simple. But it is exactly this mullet concept, right? From halfway, a third back in the room, we've got some color, some lighter materials. We've got the wood on display. We've got some accessories and trinkets and memorabilia, all behind your eye line. That front section is all about the content.
Yep.
And I have this issue when people oh, your rooms are like visually a bit plain and boring, right? You're taking all the fun out of it. Cinema should be a fun room. Yeah, the content should be bringing the fun. If we're relying on the decor of the room to bring the fun, maybe a cinema's not for you, right? Maybe you needed a games room or something. Because to me, if you're building a room that's dedicated as a room for entertainment like this, let the content shine. And that's exactly what the front of this room does. Like I love the fact that that's how this room is. So black at the front and then some more interest in life at the back. I love it.
Now, while that's true for what we think, that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what you have to do. It's all dependent. I'm going back and I'm saying this again to reinforce it. Defining your experience at the beginning and then execute that. If you want more decorative stuff everywhere and it's not more of a business in the front, party in the back, execute that if that's the experience that you want to get. But unless you define that experience, you can't turn that into a reality. You don't know what you're going to get. So it's really important, and I'm going to keep hammering this stream after stream. Write it down, figure out what you want, and then allow your room to take you to that experience. All right. So we've talked about the room. What about equipment? Let's go back over here. So do you see, before we even talk about the specific equipment, do you see any issues with placement?
My first thing is the opposite of an issue, actually, that because this room has been framed out and then fabric wrapped, we've got some depth. I don't know if we see specifically what that depth is. We've got depth. The areas
he does say, so the back is 0.38 meters and the front is 0.36.
Yeah, so I can't quite see the side. I'm probably missing it, but
the side,
maybe it's 0.4.
He doesn't.
No, it's
it
not
doesn't
that.
say.
But irrelevant, right? We can see this. Each of these speakers are angled in towards our listening position, right? So that they are angled at the listening window, and this is one of those things that we've raised many times: is get the best from your equipment, right? Before we even worry about necessarily what the equipment is, I have a real thing about making sure that we're maximizing the performance from the equipment that we're using. And most speakers are going to have their best sound around the on-axis response. Now, we know that as a coaxial, which is what these are, that perfectly on axis actually might not be the very best, but a few degrees off that, right? We're talking a couple of degrees off, right? I don't want to be 30 degrees off. I don't want to be miles out. So the front left and right are angled. They've been positioned. Each of the side surrounds have been positioned. Even the rears are not flat to wall. And to do that, you need some space. If you didn't have the depth you've got, if you were mounting these the easy way, you hang them on a wall. Well, that's a pain, right? Because then they're just flat.
So Antonino says he's got 12 centimeters on both sides.
Cool. Now, that's amazing, right? So 12 centimeters. How many speakers do you even know that fit in 12 centimeters, let alone 12 centimeters with the ability to get some angle on them?
Not very many. And then taking that a step further, how many speakers do you know that will fit, but then have the capability to do what he's asking them to do?
Absolutely. So I am going to confirm to myself, because I don't know off the top of my head, and it's one of the things I didn't look up. How deep is that speaker? Like, what's its
let's
depth
switch to your measurements here.
Yeah, but there's no physical measurements in that.
Not in the report, but there is on the, if you just search the Ascendo, the 6, and go down to the bottom of the screen.
That
it is
window
there.
that you're seeing is Adobe, because I've already downloaded the thing. So I'm having to quickly grab these off the websites.
I got it.
Speakers 6 specification.
They're not very deep.
No, it is dimensions, depth, 88 millimeters, 94 with the grill. Let's be honest, if you're putting them behind fabric, I wouldn't use the grill. So
To be honest, if you're putting if you cannot, I wouldn't use the grill at all.
yeah, sure.
I think in any situation, if you don't need the grill, don't use it. And the reason I say that, even though it's menial, you put anything in front of a speaker, you attenuate to some degree. Now, this is a choice. It's potentially an aesthetic choice or protection choice of, do I want the grill in front of it? But it does do something. Don't think that it is perfectly acoustically permeable, because it is not.
So we're at just under 3.5 inches deep. There we go. I've made it. So that's what one golden eagle feather long, isn't it? I think. What will you use except metric? Anything with metric, right? So yeah, right. It's nothing. That speaker has got an absurdly shallow depth. And if we were like, if you or I were tackling this room from a design perspective, and you're in this position where you've got that depth to play with on the walls, and you know that you want to hide them and be able to create some angle, the number of choices you've got of speakers that could go there is
very limited.
Now, one of the ways that we might tackle that is in the build out of that space, because of the way that's been studied, and it's got the plywood and then there's a frame like fabric on top of it. It may have been that we'd build a baffle and use an in wall. But
That's
then
ideal though, because you can't angle it. Or if you
right,
do
well,
angle it,
you'd
adds
be
a lot of
angling the baffle, right?
complications.
So the construction complexity goes through the roof, because now you're having to angle those baffles. And let's just say you were doing that with a speaker you didn't have great data for. You would be choosing that angle, committing to construction, building that baffle at an angle before you fit it, right? Two things are great here. Because of the way this has been done, essentially with space for shelves to put the speakers on, like they've got a platform to stand on, we've got some flexibility of moving them. Have you got a sidewall photo there?
Yes.
I think you have.
I'm trying to pick the best one.
Okay, so you can see, right, they are on a shelf. They've been built onto a platform, which means you've got some ability to rotate them and experiment a little bit. But we're also using a product that does give us the data. So our prediction becomes better, and we've left ourselves in a position that we can have some flexibility. It's rare as hen's teeth, right? There just aren't that many speakers that are that shallow that are going to give us this option. So you and I, if we were building this space, probably would have ended on this speaker. We're biased, okay, right? Because Ascendo is one of the brands that we both deal with a lot.
But I think we gravitate towards certain brands because we get the data that we need.
Right. I say we're biased. I'm not saying we're unfairly biased. There's a reason we're biased. There is a reason that these are the products that we use. That's not, there's not a commercial bias for them. We use them because they deliver the engineering result that we need. But the reality is, in this space, independently, I bet you and I both would have ended up on that same speaker.
Yes. I don't know of really, outside of in-wall speakers, any others, maybe the Perlisten X series, but it's not even out yet. So yeah, this would be
it. They are out. Maybe they're not in the US. Is your distributor very slow?
They're not shipping that I'm aware of yet.
Oh, they're all over the UK already. We got those.
Don't make me feel bad.
I mean, I haven't, but I know there are UK dealers with stock already.
Go away.
So yeah, there are potential. Now when you see it from that angle, because we haven't got an elevation view of this room, we've got that plan view. Are the surrounds maybe a touch high?
Potentially, just looking at that, if I use the chair over here as a gauge, head's probably about here. So maybe, but
it's not excessive.
No,
Now,
this could have been done as a choice in order to fire over people's heads. But if we go back to the plan, this speaker is also a head.
yeah,
So I would have thought that it was one or the other in that situation. So if this speaker is a head, because I actually have this same thing, I made this same choice. I think mine's not quite, mine's more in here. But in order for my surround to not just fire into the nearest person, the nearest meat bag, and have it as an absorber, I moved it forward so that more people are on axis or slightly off axis to that sound. Now, this is forward and up. So your surround ideal position is more here. I understand that your rear wide is here, or your rear surround, I guess we'll call it. So I probably would have liked to see that lower since they are not directly aside, but it's not egregious.
so yeah, like because we don't want this speaker exactly on axis, potentially having that little touch of extra height is on this particular speaker could be beneficial.
These look lower.
Yeah, and I think that's a traditional thing, isn't it? That slightly elevating surrounds. That
But I mean, these
is a
speakers look lower than.
that's the fronts, right? That's your LCR on that wall.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, it is. Yeah, you're right.
yeah. You see the center in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think he
Um,
made a choice. That was a design decision for X, Y, or Z reason to have these higher.
yeah.
So Antonio, no, I know you're here. Can you provide any reason to
He has said he did it on purpose.
why did you decide to make them higher? I'm not critiquing. There's reasons to do that. I'm not
Mhm.
saying you were wrong. What was your thought process in making those higher? Now back to the speakers. Um, what how do you feel about that selection outside of the form factor? How do you feel about the Six's capability in this room?
I haven't taken an exact measurement, but it's one of those speakers that we know it's going to hit the kind of SPL levels that we need it to hit in a space like this. So
He says roughly 3 meters front wall to reference position.
yeah. So if we go from 1 meter to 2, anechoically, we're going to
Mhm.
need 6 dB. From 2 to 4 would be 6 dB of loss. Without a calculator, I won't tell you the exact number because it's not quite exactly halfway between, but it's going to be around, anechoically, we're around 9 dB of loss. We've got plenty of output on a 6. A 6 is peak.
Can you go down to the
SPL.
CEA 2010 data?
I can. Which one do you want me to go? Hang on.
Compression.
You want the compression plot? This one?
Keep going down. There you go. Up. Up.
Maximum. Oh, this one. You want that one?
Yeah.
So, I mean, here's the thing that we are not interested. I understand why we're showing it on the measurement, but we're really not interested in anything under 80 hertz.
The crossover on this speaker is going to be substantially higher than 80. It's a design decision on this speaker. You're not going to cross this speaker at 80. It's not going to happen.
Exactly that. They've shown on the spec sheet the measurement data. They've said 95 hertz to 20 kilohertz is minus 3 dB. I would realistically on my speaker be focusing somewhere around 100 hertz as my crossover.
I'd probably be 100 to 110.
Yeah. So look
Is
how much
where I'd
more
be.
output we've got. Like at 80, we've got a sag, of significant. It's not quite 20 dB, but it's significant that we lose a lot of output below this point. Yeah. If you can be up at 100 or more, we've got loads of output. Now, you're obviously going to get some in-room reinforcement from the boundaries, but we've said loads of times before that focusing on theatrical reference level isn't the right thing for most people. And in a room this size, I don't think it's that important to be worrying specifically about theatrical reference level. If we were, we'd be looking for it's actually 108 dB peaks. Long story, I'm not going to get into on this video, but the idea it's 105 is slightly not true. But I don't think that's going to be what is actually comfortable in this space. So we're likely going to be aiming a bit lower than that, like for our absolute peaks. And apart from the very bottom range where the crossover is going to be, this speaker is going to comfortably get us there, right?
Now, some people are going to look at this speaker and go, because a lot of reviewers focus on low end extension. So do you know the reason why they haven't tried to reinforce this? I mean, we can see where the port starts to kick in. I'm assuming it's that little spike that's going on at, was that 60? And then it drops off pretty heavily after that. I mean, am I correct to say that it was a decision to made to limit distortion? And if you're going to rely on subs, or the design philosophy for this use case for this speaker was, I'm going to have subs anyway. And if you look at the proximity for this speaker with the subs, I mean, they're right next to each other.
Yep.
So the localization, while when you get higher in the frequency range, you are able to localize the source, it moving, and Antonino says about 100 hertz is where his crossover is. It moving, even if you're able to potentially localize, it's right here. And most of your vocals are going to be here anyway, and your subs are right next to them. So am I correct to say that limiting low-end excursion limits distortion?
Yeah, right. So you've got a trade-off. There's always going to be a trade-off. Like, we could look at the level and extension. We can almost kind of look at the area under this graph. So if we want, like, our limitation here is how far that cone can move out. Like, what is the excursion of that cone and how much surface area the cone has. So we can get a value of how much air does that cone displace as it moves. So there's a volume displacement. Now,
I think there's a graph for this. Well, not for the volume displacement, but for the frequency and distortion. I think it's up.
Well, we can see we have a few things that are shown in this table, but we'll look at this one, the compression one, in a second. So with volume displacement, there is a limit. Okay, so there is a point where the cone can't move further. It's reached the end of the magnet structure, like the mode structure.
How far it can travel.
Right. So when
you're talking about displacement, you're talking about how much air it can actually move, how much air it can displace.
Right. And as frequency reduces, you're needing to move a lot more air. So you can take, using DSP, you can take a really small driver and make its 3 dB point. So the point where it's rolling off, you can make that really quite low. But what you're really doing to achieve that is you're limiting everything above that point. Like, there's a maximum you're going to get from that speaker. And if you want to keep this flatter to lower frequencies, all you're going to do is reduce higher end stuff down to what the physical limits are. Now, how could Jeffrey get more out of this speaker?
Jeffrey is the prime guy
owner
behind
of Ascendo. Sorry, yeah. So how could Ascendo get more from his speaker, right? You can fit a bigger driver, as in move up from a 6 to an 8 to a 10-inch woofer. You can have longer excursion, which, let's be honest, this is an 88 millimeter deep speaker. Expecting more excursion from it, everything it moves out, it has to move back, right? We've not got a lot of space in this cabinet for more excursion.
And then when you increase the excursion, your motor has to get bigger. There's a lot of
bigger
things
magnets.
that have to change. Yep.
So the reality is, if you wanted to get more, if you wanted this graph to look like you had more excursion, so that this was, it's flat to 60 hertz. What you would have done is use the crossover to pull down everything that's higher, because you're not going to get more at 60 hertz. So what
Can you
this
go up
speaker
to the CEA 2034 at the very top? And I
yes,
think that that's a good showcase for what we're talking about. Keep going.
this
There.
one?
Yeah. So you can make DSP look like we could take this flat line and you could extend it out further, further left into the lower frequency ranges to make it look like that. And a lot of manufacturers do that. But the problem is, and this is why this next question is so important, at what SPL level was that measurement taken? Because Jonathan and I talked about this on Monday. Um, as you near a speaker's limit, as you get closer and closer and closer and closer, the speaker is going to move closer to its native behavior. And you can see that in the compression plot under the CEA 2010B, where what you see, that drop off, is the speaker's natural behavior.
Yeah. So
Not that one, down further is the one I was talking
well,
about.
compression one is interesting because what we're seeing here is effectively the result of what happens as we add more power. And we can go into detail, like we've been given enough data to find out, like, where does this speaker really reach its
Can you
limit?
zoom in for me?
Ooh, can I? Yeah.
There
Like,
you go.
where does adding more power not actually help us? We can combine that with seeing where we get distortion. As we add increased voltage, we can see how distortion goes up. So
Mhm.
we can make some really sensible decisions about how to use this speaker because we've got all of this data. We understand where it suffers compression. We can see the maximum voltage that it's comfortable taking. And the reality is that this speaker in that cabinet size has been designed to hit really decent SPL levels, but without low end extension. So in the upper range, like from even 200 hertz up, right? When we look at where was the one I'm after? From here, right? You know, by 200 hertz, this thing's playing, we're up over 100, well, we're approaching 120 dB here. But at points, it can reach 122 dB peak. We've got 111 continuous, but none of this matters. Like this stuff down at 40, 50, 60 just doesn't matter. We're letting the subs deal with all of that. So this is a speaker that can give us high SPL levels in the range it needs to deliver that. And we just have to know that we're going to underpin it with subs.
Mhm.
And the compromise of this speaker and its depth is that you've pushed the crossover up from 80 to 100.
Mhm.
Is that a compromise I'm willing to take? All day long.
Yeah.
Because what else might you have done? You might have needed a speaker that is another 100 mil deep to get, like, if you want to get more performance, and we could do it, right? There'll be an Ascendo that could do that. We could move up to a 10. But there's a compromise because it's a bigger speaker. We're in a space where we are only giving up a small amount of that sidewall. We're angling the speaker to get the best from it. We're getting all the SPL we need in the range it's actually designed to play. Hey, it works, and the design intent is fit for the purpose that it's being used for.
Now, do you have the 5 pulled up?
I do.
So the 5 is being used as the tops.
And
Do you
again, we
think-
can see, so these are measured in a baffle. The reality is when you take a speaker that's this shallow and you put it on a wall or right next to a wall, its behavior is very similar to being in a baffle. So these have been measured at half space rather than free space. They are designed to be put in or on a wall. If you're mounting that on a wall, its behavior is so close to what it is here that these measurements are valid. What these measurements are not showing is what happens if you put this speaker on a stand in the middle of the room. It was never designed to be used that way,
Which
right?
what'll typically happen in those situations, you're gonna lose low end extension.
Yeah, but it wasn't designed to be used that way. It's been measured the way it's been intended to use. And an on wall or in wall, in this case, at that depth, are pretty irrelevant.
I'm gonna kind of reinforce that yes, it wasn't designed. It doesn't mean you can't use it that way. You just need to know that you're gonna lose low end extension. So the the boundary interaction, the SBIR for this is accounted for in the speaker's design and behavior. Like it needs that interaction in order to get more of that low end extension. And part of its design and how it was designed to deal with some of the stuff in the other parts of the frequency range, negative or positive, has been accounted for because of this speaker's use case. So this is used for the tops. It's not as capable, obviously, as the 6, but it is in a closer proximity. So
Yeah.
would you say it's adequate? I would.
Yeah, if budget was not relevant, I might have tried to keep 6s everywhere.
6s. I'm not. The one drawback I have, and this is me being, I mean, I would say this about anything. So the one drawback I have with the 5 is it's more increased need for a higher crossover. I mean, it goes up even higher, substantially so.
And and the spec sheet covers that, right? They've said its minus 3 dB point is 100 hertz. The reality when we look at this graph is I might be choosing just to cross this even a little bit higher, maybe 120. I wouldn't have too much concern crossing it still at 100. There's less low end often mixed into those top channels. It depends on the mix because sometimes it's like full range gets thrown towards them. It does depend, but I'd probably cross it at 120 and I wouldn't even worry about it. We still are getting a wide dispersion. We're seeing in here, like I really class these as predominantly being good to 30 degrees either side of axis. There are points when we lose a bit of output inside that, but I'm pretty comfortable using these, classing their good energy to 30 degrees. But
quick question before we move on. Vidatus asks, if LCR speakers are smallish like this, is it better to go ported to get better output around the crossover? Sorry if I missed the beginning. So these speakers are ported. Do you like using the port? Now, these speakers are a positive for their port is they're ported in the front. They are not back ported because of their design premise of being used near a boundary. If you had a back port, like most bookshelves do, putting them near a boundary can have not great effects. So would you implement this in a theater using the port? I think both of our crossovers aren't going to interact with the port hardly at all.
Yeah. So the challenge we've got when we mix things that are ported with things that aren't, so you might have non-ported subwoofers.
Or speakers that are ported with other different speakers that are ported.
Right. Now, where that's going to be interesting is the behavior at the port, because we get a change of behavior from that speaker once it goes through that port. Like, so below its port tuning, we get a point where there is an inversion of phase that could suddenly mean that we struggle with our crossover to get it aligned to the subwoofers. But let's be clear, these are the kind of things, Ascendo are the kind of engineers who have considered these things. This is not a hit and hope type approach. And again, they give us a data. So this actually just shows impedance, but we can derive the phase shift from the impedance curve. And we can look at where the impedance is. This spike is part of that port tuning. If we're crossing this speaker over around 100 hertz, it's right in this space that isn't affected by these two impedance spikes. Like, this speaker has been designed knowing that this is where we're going to cross it over, and the effects of a port are not right in that same place.
So the peak on the right is limitations of the driver. Am I correct? I mean,
yeah, there'll be a natural resonance, and then there's the port tuning.
Yep.
But look where we're going to cross it over. It avoids both of them. So the concerns of a phase shift where we're trying to cross it to a sub, whether that sub be ported or not. Like the port tuning of a subwoofer is miles away from this crossover point. So the subwoofer is going to be in a linear phase region at that point, but this speaker is not being affected by these two big spikes around our crossover.
But what
So
may
I'm
be
not
affected, though,
concerned by
is the interaction of the 6 and its port.
I can show you the same thing. The key is that we have this data. Like
Yes,
in
and
many
you can
cases,
make a
we just
decision.
don't have the data. Where is the impedance plot?
It's usually down further.
I'm not sure it's in this one.
The 6 may not have it.
I don't
Jeffrey.
think we actually have it for that. We could get it because it would be available, but I don't think we actually have it. But it's going to be the same case that it's been designed with care and attention, knowing there's going to be a crossover. Like these speakers have been designed for theatre use. This can be a challenge of using speakers not designed for theatre in a theatre. When you get a speaker that's been designed as it could be a tower or a bookshelf speaker, that the designer's intent was for it to be a music-based speaker. Actually, they may end up having some port tuning or things that fall right where we want to cross over and having some interaction that wasn't intended, like you say about rear ports, right? These define where these things can be put. This speaker was always designed as a theatre speaker.
And before moving on, as Ben just mentioned with the rear port, a rear port is not bad. It's simply that you need to use the speaker in its designed way. Moving it outside of its designed intent, you're going to have some things that you're going to have to deal with. So we're not saying that front port, rear, whatever is better or worse, as long as they're used in their designed way. I mean, a rear port is meant to sit off of a wall X distance and then fire sound backwards, reflect off that wall, and come back and creating a more potentially enveloping or nice sound, and to further reinforce the low end. So it's not necessarily that one is worse than the other. It's just that you need to use them how they were intended, or at least accounting for those potential unwanted effects from using it outside of its use case. Okay. Enough about the speakers. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the speakers? I think they were a great choice for this room.
Yeah, I'm happy with speakers.
Do you have the stuff for the subs? Or at least the spec sheet? I don't know that there's any measurements on the subs.
I do not have that measurement.
Put them in chat. Open the chat.
Okay. Give me a second.
While he's looking that up, there was... what did we do here? So there's
What chat did you put them in? Oh, private chat. I didn't even know we had a private chat one.
The Yamaha is the preamp. It's the A8A. I don't really have any issues with the Yamaha. The Yamaha is... Let me pull this up so you guys can see it. So it's this guy, the A8A. I don't really have any issues with this. My philosophy on preamps and AVRs and any type of processor is go in, define what you want, define what you need, and then select the tool that gets you there. Same with the speakers. Define what you want, define what you need, select the equipment that gets you there. And my hope with Antonino is that the Yamaha was that selection. He defined, hey, I like YPOW. I needed this number of channels. I needed this type of processing. I needed this, and this. And this got him there. Same thing with this 7-channel amplifier or however many channels this is, that amplifier did what he was asking it to do. I don't have a problem with most people's equipment selections at this level outside of the speakers in most cases, as long as they're doing and accomplishing the task that the owner, designer, implementer, whomever needs them to do. So I don't have a problem with those. Did you find the sub?
I have got the sub available, I think. 1 second. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen with you.
There you go.
Here we go. So I
know nothing about these subs.
Nor do I. And the fact that the website is in German is going to make that slightly interesting for me. Is there let me quickly expand this and see if there's an English button so I can at least
If you have
read it.
Chrome at the top, it should have a translate button.
I am running Comet at the moment, so no.
Oh my gosh. Hold on.
You're not oh my goshing at me using Comet, right?
No, that you just don't have a translate.
No, okay. I mean, I'm sure I can ask Comet to translate for me. Let's not worry about that. This is my AI-powered browser.
Translate to English. Enable translation. Okay. So I've got it translated.
Fine. You share it.
I don't want to share it.
Okay.
God. Yeah, I'll share it. Hold on. I got it.
So they're Stingray series, is that correct? The Stingray 15s.
Okay. So I am sharing. Okay. So this is translated by Safari to English, so it's there's potential that this isn't right. But this is interesting. They're talking about installation advantages, being close to the wall, and the benefits you can get from gain and that boundary interaction. So I like that. I've never seen a manufacturer talk about this before on their website. I actually quite like that because it's informing the whomever's buying this about decisions that they may make.
Yep.
That's super cool. I rather like that. Okay. So here is the specs on this. So it's a paper cone. So super light, 300 watts RMS, 600 watt peak. Talks about the moving mass, voice coil.
Okay, so they give a stroke so that we can actually calculate that volume displacement. You know, so without giving us volume displacement, we can look at the size of the cone and we can see how much the excursion is in both directions. So we can calculate ourselves how much air this thing can move.
Mm-hmm.
And it's becoming my preferred way of looking at subwoofers, is to cut through most of this other spec. How much air can it move? At that point, I can work out everything else I need to know.
So this is talking about the associated amplifiers. I love all of this data they give you.
Yeah.
This is great. I would like to see measurements, which maybe I just haven't gotten to it yet. The prices aren't bad. So if this is, I don't know why it brought that yellow band up.
So I'm going to...
the Stingray 12, which I think is what he has.
He has 15s, doesn't he, I believe?
Okay, if he has the 15s.
He has the 15.
Here is the 15. So the 15 is 1,000 watt RMS, 2,000 watt peak, 30 millimeter. Oh, that's a damage. 15
millimeter is your hard stop.
Yeah, don't do this. Bad things will happen. Bad sounds will be made. That's the standard. The premium is 2,000 watts RMS, 4,000. We're getting to some serious power for a 15-inch.
I think what we can say without knowing this sub is that, you know, it's a fairly serious product.
Mm-hmm.
But what interests me more is where they're placed. So there's 4 of them. Great start. 2 on the front wall, 2 on the back. And they are placed at the 1/4 and 3/4 points of the front and back wall.
Mm-hmm.
So to really understand why I like that placement, you need to find the video we did on room modes and subwoofer placement. But for each of these pair, like if we look at just the front wall pair, we'll get a phantom sub in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is we are going to cancel out or certainly mitigate the modes that occur where the subs are placed and the modes that occur exactly halfway between them. And the way this works with reflections, we get the same now front to back. Because we've got them at the front of the room and the back of the room, we'll mitigate the modal issues on exactly the halfway line. This is pretty much, to me, the most sensible layout. If you're doing a multi-sub layout, 2 front, 2 back, 1/4 and 3/4, as a starting point, as a sensible layout.
Antonino says he did a 1/4.
Yeah, so it's a 1/4 and 3/4 one side and then 1/4 in from the other. So it's 3/4, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? They're quarter in from each side. That's where I want to see them. So for modal mitigation, this is probably your best starting point. If you can model the room and you can look at all the other stuff, if you can do some complex analysis of it, great. But if you're just looking at a really decent starting point to get you in the most likely place that room modes are going to be mitigated as much as possible, do that.
An easy way to start, open up REW and use its room sim. It's not perfect, but it'll give you a solid idea of what things can change given your seating position and where the subs are and how you can potentially benefit from different sub positions and adding more or even removing some subs if they're behaving irregularly or erratically. So Ben mentioned our video on subs and sub placement. There is a graph in there and a tool that Ben actually has that showcases where modes are. So I would encourage you, if you want to know more about this, if you're thinking, man, they're speaking in tongues or something like that, go look for that video. It's on my channel, and I'll probably link it at the very end of this. So it'll be the one that shows up in the card at the very end of this video. It's going to explain why this matters and how sub placement and seating position can dictate how those modes interact in the space and in the room. Frankly, going back to these subs, I was a little worried about those subs because I'd never heard about them, but looking at the data, or at least what we have so far, this is a solid sub. At least it seems that way. Again, we have no measurement data, but just from specs, I'm not really worried about
With
that.
the 4 of them in that space, I'm pretty comfortable that they're gonna hit the numbers we need. You know, they're going to
Yes.
deliver a decent experience. We know
Yeah.
we can calculate it. We haven't in advance, but we could do the math ourselves and look at the volume displacement. We can run some numbers that will actually show us how much that pressurizes the room. It's the volume we're displacing relative to the volume of that space. We can do that maths ourselves from the data we've got. The likelihood is we're getting a decent output from these.
Yeah. Those are good. I like those. I can't really say they're good. I'm confident based on the specs. Now, last thing to talk about before we give our overall impressions of the room, video. So
Yes.
video for this room, we don't, Antonino, what screen is it? You said it's an Elite and it's acoustically transparent, but you don't say if it's perf or what material it is. If you can give us the actual material, that
I'm
would be
not
even
sure
better.
Elite do woven, do they? I think they're all perf.
I feel like they do woven.
Do they? Okay.
I think they do.
I
But
could be
just
wrong.
having what it is would be hugely beneficial. So looking at this, let's talk about the video. You kind of mentioned, we talked about the mullet concept. Party in the back, business in the front. I
Yep.
love that for video. It doesn't necessarily have nearly as much of an impact on sound because sound doesn't care what it looks like, just how it behaves. For video, though, with reflections, the mullet concept is great. And without knowing his screen material, I'm going to assume that it's perforated. That's just a guess. But it looks kind of woven. Without knowing the gain of the screen, I'm going to say that the NZ500 is a perfectly adequate, as long as he's not chasing super bright, perfectly adequate selection. I love the NZ500. I think it's
It is a
woven.
woven.
So he's going to be somewhere between like a 0.6 and a 0.87, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing is the size of that screen. How do you feel on the size of it?
If we look at how much space is on the sides, I know it's not your favorite. I think you would have liked a little more space in here from the sidewall. You like him in a foot. It's close.
Yeah. Now, I'll be honest. Where the speaker is positioned, like my concern is when you push the screen too big, and then you get the speaker right out into the very corner of it.
Mhm.
You know, the speaker is is inboard enough. Like that speaker, I think looks like it's inboard by, we could run those numbers, but it's 20, 30 centimeters in, right? The speaker's where I'd want to see it. So I'm good with that width.
And you're talking about in from the sidewall, not from the frame. The frame
Yeah.
is something you need to consider when you're placing the
Yep.
speaker. For anybody that doesn't know, the frame of a screen, not acoustically permeable. It's not. Don't put a frame in front of a speaker. Bad times will happen. I don't have a problem with. I like screens being as big as they can be. The only drawback I have, the only points of, and this is just from my experience and what I would want. I don't know what Antonino would want. I would want this to be a little bit brighter. I think with a woven screen at 135 inches diagonal, 120 centimeters wide, it's not going to be as, on limitations of an NZ500, it's not going to be as bright as I'd want. But back on the NZ500, the NZ500 from JVC brings a tremendous amount of capability, minus the brightness, but that's given its price point. Native contrast, interesting contrast, HDR tone mapping. It doesn't have any motion control, but it's a fantastic projector for the price point. So I would have just wanted it to be a little bit brighter, potentially go perf, but he is 9 feet from it, so he'd probably see the perf holes. So I can understand the want to go woven.
Yeah.
What's your
Now,
thoughts?
So the interesting thing on the brightness and that projector is it is in the room. There was an option, it was mentioned in the notes that it was considered to put it outside the room, effectively in the room behind, but that was rejected by others in the home, right? Completely understandable. So if you run this projector at its maximum light output, it's going to start to get relatively noisy, because of its position inside the room. So you've got a trade-off of, if we bring its light down to 75, 80%, its fan noise is going to come down. Obviously, that has an impact on brightness. So there is a bit of a balance here of, to me, the screen size is about the right size. I would say a good starting point is to consider that you want to set just less than 1 times how wide the screen is. So this screen is 3.2 meters wide, and he's sitting about 2.9 meters from it. So we're going to be in high, I haven't calculated the number, and I should have done, but it's high 50s to low 60s vertical viewing angle.
Oh, I love the screen size. I'm just worried about brightness. That's my only worry.
So if I was specifying this, I would be getting the seat position right, the screen size right, then making sure I'm hitting it with enough light. And I think the seat position is correct.
Yep.
I think the screen size is correct.
Yep.
Whether there's enough light comes down to if you're happy running it at full power.
See,
if it's
for me, I don't think it would even be enough at full power. But that's why I say it's subjective. Some people like a little bit dimmer. It makes your blacks blacker. And the noise wouldn't necessarily bother me, but this would be use the tool that gets you to the experience. And if the NZ500 got you to the experience, correct choice. I don't have a problem with the projector. It's just making sure that this has gotten you to the experience level that you're trying to get to. And if it did, fantastic.
Yeah, my guess is that it's probably a calibrated image on that woven screen. We're probably getting to maybe 24, 25 foot Lamberts in nits.
I don't know that we're even getting that high.
If you fired, so I ran the real rough numbers of full power pre-calibrated, and I ran it at 0.8 gain because I wasn't sure what kind of fabric it was. But at full power, if it was 0.8 gain on that screen size, you'd be around 35 foot Lamberts. It's lower gain than that. You calibrate it, you maybe pull it slightly off peak power. I reckon you'll be in low to mid 20s foot Lamberts. It'll be 20 plus. It's still brighter than a commercial cinema.
You're going to be in like the high teens to low 20s, depending. So if you did 20 foot Lamberts, 2 nits. Yeah. So right, I was thinking like 70 nits is right where you'd be, and that's not a bad image. And the reason I say it's not a bad image is because a big part of viewing how bright something is, your brain has a really hard time telling unless it's right next to something else. Like if I don't have that image right next to a super bright image, your brain adjusts and it's not necessarily bad. Now, I've been around a bunch of bright rooms. The Mad VR Experience Center, my showroom is 300 nits. Once you get used to that and how that feels, you do get used to it. But once you get used to this, you're not going to be able to go from your 70 nit room and walk into like 100, 125, 100, maybe even 150 and go, man, that's so much different. Your brain will adjust after a few minutes. So I'm not saying that this is bad. This just comes down to subjective preference. And I think it's well executed. If that gets you to where you want to go, awesome. Antonino says the noise does bother him.
Yeah, and it depends what options you've got, because you could look at putting a piece of very low reflective glass across this front, but once you seal that space, you've got to provide ventilation, right? Haven't looked at the manual for a JVC for a while, but we would be in a place that's tighter. The surround on that is almost certainly tighter than what's recommended in JVC's manual. They ask for quite a lot of free space around it. So the only real way to get that noise lower is going to be to get a cover in front of it, but then you need really good ventilation. And I don't know what options you've got of where ducting can go behind the room, out the room, but you'd need a lot of airflow, like a proper fresh air supply in and an extract. So it's always doable, but there are challenges involved. And this is a reality. It's a reality of the compromise of, we love projected images. Projectors come with noise. He says the noise bothers him. Like if he runs it at 100%. And that's the thing is, at 100%, it's not a quiet projector. I think you have to back it into about 75-ish to get the fan noise to drop quite dramatically. Then you're losing 25% of your light output, right? So you've got those compromises. It's a challenge. And I'll be honest, we've used JVCs against what the user manual says. We've used them in methods that do. I have had clarification from people, I won't say who, but off the record clarification from people that what we do is safe and acceptable, but they would never put that in their user manual. But we have some options of, getting this into a hush box, improving some ventilation around it. They're not ventilation grills, are they? But I can see either side of it. I don't think they are. It's a challenge, and that is going to be one of the. Is that the biggest drawback in the room? Is the noise from that projector? Maybe. That of all the things that I would say are issues, projector noise maybe is the biggest issue. I think I was doing a demo yesterday, and we were playing some things that had very, very low level atmospheric detail. And so we played a scene from The Hobbit. I'm going to say it was Battle of the Five Armies. It might have been Desolation of Smog. They're in the big underground cavernous chamber. And where you get the sense of scale of that room that you're in is very, very quiet, atmospheric background details. And when you lose that detail because it's below the noise of a projector.
It's below the noise floor of the room.
Yeah, right. So some of the fine detail is what transports you into the scale of the space that is being conveyed acoustically, like what's in the recording to give you that sense of space, some of the low level reverberation and the tiny details. So that transporting you to another realm, to like this imaginary world, some of that can be lost if you lose the ultra low level detail. And that, it's kind of the only thing I can criticize. I've got so little to criticize on this room. If noise floor is the criticism, it's a hard one to fix. You know, would I change to a direct view screen to make the room quieter? Probably not my
No.
choice. I still would prefer.
I don't think
acoustic-
direct view screens are perfectly quiet in and of themselves. There's going to be other issues that they're going to have. And even if they are, heat becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Even more so then. But to wrap this up, I think this is a great room. My two issues are, I guess, the noise of the projector, which I really can't complain because my Griffin's in the room. So it's a limitation that I have with the space, and it's a limitation in this one. And then potentially the noise or the decay time of the room, I may want to be a little bit higher, or at least a more reflective surface, but it's honestly probably fine, especially for home theater. If you're not focusing a lot on 2-channel music, you're probably great. So my overall impressions of this space, great. I don't have any issues.
You know, it's
overall. I think it was well executed, Antonino.
It's something that I should say less, and I hope we get to a position one day where I can say it less. But this has been better designed and executed than many rooms built by professional integration companies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a reality, right? Because time has been spent to consider things and, you know, make the right choices, get the specification right. It's really well executed. It's a great room.
Yep. Great job. Excellent job. For anybody that would like to have their room featured on Rooms in Review, there is a link to a Google form in the description of this video. Feel free to fill that out, upload any of the needed images, and answer any questions that we may have. We go through them in the order that they are received, and there is quite a queue. So don't think that just because you submit it that, you know, get upset because we haven't gotten to it. We're just going through the other ones. We will get to your room. We're going to do them all.
We have about 3 months backlog already, I think.
Yeah,
so we've got a few.
I think more than that. We got way more than that.
Okay.
So don't get disheartened when we don't do it right away. We'll get to it. But I love the room. Excellent job, Antonino. Love doing these. Love going through the kit. If you have any suggestions for any future content, anything that we can change, anything with these rooms in review, feel free to drop them in the comments. Please do not put them in the chat because neither Ben nor I go back and reread the chat after the streams. But we are going to wrap this up. Ben, you and I will be back on Monday.
I believe
Do
so,
we know
yeah.
what Monday's topic is?
Nope. We'll discuss offline. We'll work it out.
No, I've already got it scheduled.
Okay.
It is, can you fix room issues with equipment?
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one because somebody was actually talking about that in one of the comments, like, hey, can you, now that Direct has gotten to the level that it's gotten, can you fix issues with it? So we'll be talking and discussing that, not just about Direct, but equipment in general. And we'll go from there. Thanks again to Antonio for letting us do his room on Rooms in Review. Thanks for joining us. We do these live. If anybody wants to watch these or join us live instead of the VOD, feel free to join us. We do these every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. Thanks again. We'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Enjoy those home theater journeys. See you later.